close the economy, but it is the federal responsibilities, the federal government's responsibility to open the economy. If it's your authority to open, why wasn't it your authority to close, right? That's an obvious question. And when you say open, what does that mean? Does that mean you're going to proclaim all businesses open? Isolation over. Come out of your homes, businesses are open. What does it mean? Governors need clarity. That's what they need. You're the president. There's a constitution. There may be legal questions. What's a federal responsibility? What's a state responsibility? But the president has a lot of lawyers. So if it is a legal construct, you're president of the United States. You want to put forth a disaster emergency plan as president, that's your right. And by the way, this is a federally declared disaster. You know, I was in the federal government, and the rules of government matter. There is an operating manual. States can declare disasters, and then the state is in charge over the local governments. Federal government declares an emergency. The federal government is now in charge. And they have done a federal emergency declaration here. Well, why didn't the federal government make decisions on closing? I don't know. Could they now say we're going to make decisions on opening? Yes. I don't believe they could have a policy that says everybody opens 5 days from now. How do you differentiate different parts of the country with different infection rates, different places on the curve? Some are at the apex, some are at the plateau, some are on their way up the mountain. How do you do that differentiation? Are you going to do a formula that says any place with an infection rate less than 2% can open? You know, how do you do it? I don't know. But he could put forth a model to do that. Nick, go ahead.
Against Mayor de Blasio, who said that he's exceeding his authority by announcing schools will be closed for the rest of the year, and teachers are already.
What was the first part of that question?
Are you going to be pursuing any sort of action or?
No, there are no actions to take. The law on the situation is clear. I understand we have about 700 school districts. I understand we have about 500 mayors. I understand we have about 50 county executives. I understand everyone has a voice and has a role. Here, this is a state emergency. The state will follow a uniform plan or a statewide strategy. Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, New York City schools, I closed at the same time. Why? Because you have to close all the schools in the metropolitan region at the same time. There's too much interconnectivity to do it. It also has to be coordinated with the business plan. That is the only way it can work. We had a total hodgepodge of decisions with different school districts opening and different school districts closing all across the state. I came in, set a statewide closing policy. That is the law. That is what governs. Local school districts say, well, I normally make the decisions to open or close. Yes, you normally do. Not in this situation because this is a state emergency. Well, you're disrespecting the county of Suffolk. I'm not. But we're one state, and we can't have every local government making independent decisions from every other local government. That would be mayhem. Second, you just heard the basic point, which is the state then has to coordinate with other states. So I have to be able to say to New Jersey and Connecticut and Delaware and Rhode Island, here's what I'm doing as a state. I can't have 7 different policies within my state. Here's my state policy, how do we conform? Then there's another question where the president's going to say, or could say, the query, I don't care what you say, Governor. I'm going to assert my jurisdiction over the state because this is a federal emergency. And the president could say, which is the query of the question, the federal government will determine what the states do. So I understand, I have mayors call me, I have county executives call me, I have school district officials call me. They all have an opinion. I value all of their opinion, but we have one state, and the state will operate as one. And their decisions must fit within that plan, or they're not valid. If the federal government comes and says they're going to substitute a federal plan, well, that would then trump a state plan, pardon the pun, if it fit within the Constitution and the law.
On the ventilator issue.
Go ahead, Nick. Nick had a question.
Should teachers be ignoring the messages?
I'm sorry, Nick had a question? Go ahead.
But can I have a follow-up?
Yeah, let me do the first round of questions first, okay?
But other people got a follow-up.
All right. Let Nick do a question, and then we'll come back. Go ahead.
Governor, on the ventilator issue, I know you returned some ventilators yesterday to a facility in Niskayuna. Knock on wood, right now, it looks like there is less of a need for ventilators. Do you think some will get returned to some of the other upstate institutions?
If, big I, big if we are at a plateau, and on the numbers that we've all seen, it looks like we're reaching a plateau, slight uptick still, right, day to day, but a flattening. We've done so much work and acquired so many materials and equipment, et cetera, that we are fine, knock for Micah, if we don't go up. That's why we returned the 35 ventilators to the nursing home. Also because the nursing home was so, how beautiful. I mean, just how beautiful. They just gratuitously called up and volunteered 35 ventilators. Nobody even called them and asked. From a nursing home, which is the most vulnerable place and vulnerable population. So we returned the 35 ventilators. We are fine, so to speak, from an equipment point of view right now, if the number doesn't go up. And to the extent anyone, we borrowed ventilators from upstate New York, we can return them whenever they need them or as soon as practicable.
So what's the status?
But if they need them today, I can get them tomorrow.
What's the status of the ventilators that you ordered from China?
I'm sorry?
Should teachers and family members in New York City be ignored?
What happened to the ventilators?
Yes.
We ordered 17,000. I think we wound up getting about 3,000 that actually came in.
Are you still waiting for the others?
I think it would be waiting for a long, long time. I think what happened was there were so many places competing for the orders in China that they kept upping the price and they took a next order. Like we were bidding against every other state in the country. So they would say the ventilator is $25,000. I would order it at $25,000, and then another state would come in and say, I'll pay $30,000, and our order just basically got bumped. Some of the orders, the factories are saying we can get it to you in 6 months. I don't need ventilators in 6 months. We need them now. So we've gotten about 3,000. I don't think we have any serious ideas that we're going to get more. Do you know, guys?
Is that from the same vendor?
No, all different vendors.
What are the names? What are the vendors?
These are all Chinese companies. I don't know their names. But that's what I said on Let's Learn from What Happened. What sense did it make that the FEMA says we don't do purchasing, which is, by the way, what they used to do, right? I was there. I worked with FEMA. I was the HUD secretary. They used to purchase. That's what they did. It's a federal disaster. FEMA came in and was the logistics coordinator. In this case, they said it's not a federal responsibility, it's up to the states. Every state had to go out and buy ventilators and PPE and masks. Lo and behold, the main manufacturer becomes China. So you have every state calling these Chinese companies, literally, through brokers, trying to buy ventilators. Price goes through the roof. Everybody's competing with everyone. I mean, it was total madness. So that's why I say, you want to change the rules, that's your prerogative. But what are the rules? And do they make sense? For example, testing. States cannot test. I'm telling you right now, I do not have the capacity to do these tests. I can't purchase enough diagnostic tests or equipment. So an opening plan that says you must open, by the way, you must test, I can't do the tests.
Governor, you said
Is in Massachusetts or Canada about the working group or some kind of coordination?
We are not talking to Canada, I don't believe. We're talking to a number of states about who are coordinating on certain elements, not other elements, but this is a relatively new situation, today's coalition. So we'll continue talking. Anybody who wants to join in the Northeast is welcome. The more information you share, the smarter the plan, the better. Can't be bad.
Governor, just to clarify, this council will decide on both businesses and schools?
Head of economic development is on the council from each state, head health official from each state, and governor's chief of staff from each state. 3 people from each state, 6 states, 18 people, and it will be a public health strategy and an economic development strategy that fits like this. You can't do one without the other. You have to do both, and you have to integrate them in one plan. And I have to represent that I have one statewide plan for my state. My whole state will function that way. You want to divide it into downstate, mid-Hudson, upstate, by number of cases. That could be theoretically a suggestion from the commission, council. But yes, those will be the guidelines. And then it has to be smarter, because you're just sharing talent, you're sharing resources. The best minds from 6 states are the better than best minds from just any one state, right, by definition. So it'll be smarter. It will also be cooperative and collaborative, where if Jersey and Connecticut put forth a plan that is not coordinated with New York, it hurts our compliance. And remember, we're asking people to do very tough things. If you say, well, you can just go across the river and you have a different set of rules, then people will get in their car, they'll go stay with their brother-in-law who lives in New Jersey, or their brother-in-law who lives in Connecticut, and they have a different set of rules. His restaurants are open, our restaurants are closed. You know what happens? Everybody drives to that state to go to dinner. That's all that happens. It was the same point when we were talking about marijuana, right, and the rules on marijuana. If you don't conform those rules, people will just shop jurisdictions.
Doesn't that risk complicating the issue, though, with 6 different states, 6 different agendas, 6 different situations on the ground? Doesn't that make it more complicated in a way?
You don't have a choice but to coordinate. Because if another state, you are subject to whatever any surrounding state does anyway. My bars are closed. Okay, Connecticut's open. I'll go to a bar in Connecticut. I'll go to a bar in New Jersey.
Massachusetts is right here, 20 miles
Or
away.
I'll go to a bar in Massachusetts.
The coalition.
No, but we're talking to Massachusetts also. So by definition, if you do not take that fact into consideration, then you're just being blind to the facts. Well, I can't get on the same page 100% with another state. I don't expect you to. But to the extent you can avoid contradictory policies, that's better. And maybe you won't even be able to avoid contradictory policies. You know, Connecticut could say, I'm opening my bars. And I feel very strongly, and I'm sorry to be discordant, but I'm opening my bars. And New York doesn't want to open their bars, don't open your bars, but I'm opening my bars. All right, at least then we see the clash, and we're aware of it. And you try to work it out. If you can't work it out, you can't work it out. But at least you know about it and you have the conversation.
At what point would you consider reopening the Capitol building to the general public? Because certain groups like a Citizen Action or a Vocal New York would consider this access essential for policy reasons and making change, I suppose.
Yeah, look, opening public facilities will be one of the issues that's on the agenda. But my guess is, again, we talked about this morning, density. You do not want a lot of people in a small space. That is the last thing you want, because that is the breeding ground for this virus. I mean, that is goldfish, shooting fish in a barrel, right? You put a lot of people in one room, all you need is one person. That's the New Rochelle lesson. One person went to a social gathering, religious gathering, infected hundreds at one gathering. All right. Thank you very much.
You said I have a follow-up question. Should teachers and families in New York City just be ignoring messages that they're going to keep doing distance learning and remain closed?
Schools are closed. Schools in New York City are closed. Schools in Nassau are closed. Schools in Westchester are closed. Schools in Suffolk are closed. Schools across the state are closed. Schools across the state will stay closed until we say they are open. They are closed until the state says they are open. They were closed by an executive order that said all school districts in the state are closed. They will remain closed until the state says they are open. The state waived what's called the 180-day requirement that said they had to be open for 180 days to get funding. We will waive that requirement as long as the state says they are closed. And that's where we are. Closing the schools was a hard decision because we knew once you close the schools that it would impact businesses and impact the workforce. And there was great fear that nurses wouldn't be able to go to work, et cetera, because now they had no child care. We reached a point where we said we understand that, but we closed all the schools. The situation now is very simple. All the schools are closed. Well, this school district wants to reopen. I know there are 700 school districts. There are 700 opinions. There's one state policy. Couldn't be clearer, couldn't be simpler. Thank you very much, guys.
Equating this to daycare? Some teachers have reached out and said that you're equating the education system to daycare. Is that an accurate
No, the
interpretation?
education is the education system, but a practical reality is when you